have a long-term politician who started his career with City of Calgary alderman, then moved to Alberta legislature building as an MLA. We have in our studio Mr. Bob Hawkesworth. Mr. Hawkesworth, welcome to Asian Magazine.
Well, thank you for having me, and please, it's Bob.
Thank you. I'll call you Bob.
Okay, thanks.
Bob, as you have been a politician for over 35 years, tell me about it.
Oh, well, I began my first run was an unsuccessful run. I was in my mid-20s, but I was first elected in the fall of 1980. I became a city councillor for the first time the day that Ralph Klein became mayor for the first time.
Really?
Yes. So that was October of 1980, and had the privilege of serving on city council for 2 terms. Ran successfully for the New Democrats twice, and lost my seat in 1993. So I'd served 7 years in the legislature, and was fortunate enough to win a by-election to city council and serve there until 2010. So overall, about 30 years of elected public office, and it's been just the most meaningful and a privilege, an honor to be able to work with Calgary citizens in those positions.
Right. So as I said, it's a long-term politician and a full-time politician.
Yes, a long time and full-time, yes.
Right. Yes. As you said, you were elected as a City of Calgary's alderman to the council in 1980. What made you to do that?
That's a very good question. It just was something that appealed to me. I liked people, and had grown up in a household where politics was often discussed. Both my parents were school teachers, and very aware and followed current events. And it just seemed to be something that seemed quite natural. And I ran initially in 1977, and I lost, but did very well, came a close second. And so when the 1980 civic election rolled around, I thought, you know, serving the city and being a decision maker on city council, the city was going through a boom at the time. I thought be an opportunity for me to help direct and to participate in giving direction to the city. So I was successful second time out.
That's good. That's good.
Yes.
That's very nice. Then thereafter, you decided to go for Alberta legislature in 1986. How did you decide to do that?
Well, there were a number of factors. At the time, the province was in the middle of a recession. Mr. Lougheed had stepped down as premier, and Grant Notley, who was a leader of the opposition New Democrats, had perished in a plane crash. And it looked as if it might be another overwhelming majority in government at a time when I felt the values that the New Democrats stood for needed some support, and at a time when the party was weakened because of the loss of their leader.
Right.
And so I stepped forward and felt it was something that was important to me, and I thought was important to Alberta, was to have a strong presence in the legislature with the New Democrats and the values they stood for.
Okay. What made you to choose New Democrat Party?
They have for a long time been the party of Medicare. Tommy Douglas brought that into Saskatchewan, and then as part of a national government, a national parliament. We've supported greater fairness, greater equity, greater in society, and supporters of health and education. So those were the sorts of values. Looking out for working people was kind of the motto of the New Democrats for a very long time. And those were the kinds of values that appealed to me.
What are your major achievements over the time?
Well, none of them I've achieved all by myself. It's on City Council, it's the council as a whole that makes things happen. But issues that I had a role to play in that I feel great pride. One, of course, is creating a park, Nose Hill Park, out of into a natural area. That was a long fight with area residents to get that park a reality. Working on homelessness. I was part of the city councils that invested significantly in light rail transit. We've got one of the best transit LRT systems in all of North America. I'm very proud of that. Things like working with the Chinese community to preserve Chinatown, building affordable housing. I chaired the city's housing company for a number of years. And something maybe people wouldn't know about me, I chaired the city's audit committee for 9 years. And audit is very critical to good governance. So we did value for money audits, comprehensive audits of city operations over the years that I feel contributed greatly to the city being well run and providing the services in a efficient and economical way for Calgary citizens. Those are things that are more invisible to the average person, but they're things that I look back on with significant satisfaction. I've spent my life meeting people from all walks of life and all countries, and been a part of building a multicultural community here. And that's given me great satisfaction as well. Yes.
Oh, good to know.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
Good to know.
Well, and maybe I should make a point of saying that one of the things I've emphasized in this current by-election is strengthening the Human Rights Commission here in Alberta. As I've seen that commission operate over the years, I know that Wild Rose at one point was suggesting we eliminate the Human Rights Commission. I see the value, and when I go through the neighborhoods in Calgary-Foothills, it's like the United Nations living together in this city, all making a contribution to our prosperity. It's really something unique in Canada and in the world that we have this ethnic diversity and everybody making a contribution. I'm very proud to be a Canadian as I knock on doors in Calgary-Foothills.
Bob, continuing with the politics, the first time you ran in 1986 as a MLA, you won over Jim Prentice.
Yes.
At that time. Tell me about it.
Well, it was the riding was Calgary Mountain View. The incumbent was Bud Zip. And when the Conservatives came time to nominate, they actually selected Jim Prentice as their candidate. So in that race, there was a bit of a division had occurred in the PC party because of that nomination race. We had a strong campaign. I had good name recognition. And in the end, it was 257 votes, I believe, that separated the two of us. So yes, it was my first election as an NDP MLA, and my candidate from the Conservatives that I opposed was Jim Prentice. And I will say this about him, that I've always found him an honorable and fine gentleman to meet and to be with, and you know, there was no personal animosity, or there were no personal attacks. He ran a very honorable campaign and was a very worthy opponent.
Right. Is it a coincidence or pre-planned that now you are in by-election from the Jim Prentice old riding?
I think his resignation on election night took everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
This by-election, the reason for this by-election is because Jim Prentice resigned on election night. That took everybody by surprise and created this opportunity.
Yeah.
So I tell people the silver lining, I know they're frustrated. I tell people I know that it's frustrating to be going back to the polls for the third time in a year in that constituency, but the silver lining is that by resigning, Jim Prentice has opened the door for voters to choose their representative to sit on the government side of the House if they wish. As the NDP candidate, if I were elected MLA for Calgary-Foothills, I would be joining the government caucus, and the voters of Calgary-Foothills would have me as their representative, an effective representative inside government.
As the NDP Alberta government is few months old only, what are the visible changes one can see?
Right. Well, it's actually been quite an active government for the fact that it's only been in place for a few months. The first bill that they introduced was to take money from corporations and labor unions out of campaign financing. So this by-election in Calgary-Foothills is the first one under the new rules, which means that money can only come from individuals now. So people have to make that commitment as citizens with their own money. So I think that was supported widely at the time, and now I think people see the importance of taking big money out of elections. As well, the government invested in education and in healthcare. So the cuts that had been proposed in the Prentice budget were reinstated in order that there be teachers in place to meet all the students that are going to school starting this week across the province. And that's also a very popular initiative, because as I go door to door in Calgary-Foothills, there are a lot of children, a lot of families with kids, and so education is a very big priority, and people are very supportive of that priority being fully funded.
Yeah. As you are going to door knocking in the Calgary-Foothills, what are the people are telling you what they want, what they like to see change?
As I go door to door, many people in the oil patch tell me that they're anxious about their own family's future. Some of them, I can see it in their eyes when they tell me that they've received a layoff notice, or they're no longer working, or they're worried that they may be laid off. So I tell them that, we've been here before. The world price of oil is something that Alberta has always been vulnerable to, and it'll eventually come back. We know that. But in the meantime, what we need more than anything, I feel, is stability. So now is not the time for government to cut its capital spending. For obvious reasons, the private sector has cut its capital projects because of the oil price, but now is not the time for government to do the same, because if you did that, it would just be a double whammy to the Alberta economy and hurt twice as much. And so I tell people that the province is committed to now is a good time to be investing in public infrastructure projects. For example, the new cancer center at the Foothills Hospital has been announced by this government. It's needed, and the best time to add needed infrastructure is when there's a lot of capacity in the construction industry, when there are a lot of people looking for work. You can get good prices. Interest rates are at an all-time low. couldn't be a better time to be making those sorts of investments. That brings stability into the provincial economy, provides important work that people need, and over the long run, we get the kind of facilities that a growing province requires.
Right. Moving further to the same scenario, when do you think the current government, a new Democrat government in Alberta, will balance the budgets or save some money for taxpayers?
Well, our Premier has been very good about listing all the promises she made during the election and checking them off the list one by one. She did commit to balancing the budget by 2018. It may not, with the oil price having dropped, it may be another year beyond that. I don't know that at this point, though. That's only speculation. We'll get an update when the budget is tabled in the fall. But it was a commitment that she made, and I'm firmly convinced she is a person of her word and is going to do everything in her power to ensure that promise is kept.
Right. Excellent. But what do you think, as Alberta has only one industry, oil industry?
Yes.
And is there any way, or the government is thinking to set up another scenario as a production economy, so the one economy is down, then the other can balance?
Right, right. Well, Alberta goes through this conversation every time the oil price drops about how do we diversify our economy and become less dependent on oil prices. And of course, when the price is high, we stop the conversation because times are good. But we're back having this conversation, and it's really important that we get it right this time. During the provincial election in the spring, Premier Notley talked about value-added jobs from our raw products. So instead of sending raw bitumen down the pipeline, why can't we upgrade it here in Alberta? It adds jobs, it adds value, we get economic returns before we ship it to other parts of North America.
Right.
I know that's an area that she wants to look at. We need to, in my view, think of our strengths as a province as not just oil and gas, but energy. And let's see where the opportunities might be in improving our environmental performance on electricity, as well as trying to find ways to be more environmentally friendly with our oil production. And with the knowledge base we have as managers of these resources in Alberta, we've got world-class minds and research capabilities and management capabilities and technology capabilities. We need to find ways to build on those strengths.
Right.
So this is maybe this blessing in disguise, is that we're now forced to think about how we can be more innovative, how we can be smarter about what we do, look at where our strengths are that we might not have looked in the past, and find ways to incubate and grow these other areas.
As you've been in politics close to 35 years now, where do you see the politics have changed over 35 years?
Well, human nature hasn't changed, and we probably never will. So some elements of politics are just the same. We have differences of opinion. You get a city of a million people, you're going to have all shades of opinion about what we need to do. And in the political arena, we have different political parties. That hasn't changed. I think a couple of things have, though, and one, of course, is technology. Right. We wouldn't have had the kind of opportunity to get our views out in 1980 as we do today. I remember, I think my first press release as a newly elected city councillor, I had to get in the car and drive all over the city to deliver it in hand to a hard copy to every news station. So now if you have something to say, you hit a button and you can reach hundreds of thousands potentially. So in that sense, things have changed a bit.
Right. Has over the time, the needs of the people have changed?
Our city's grown.
Yeah.
And there are different forces at play. I think, but we still need to care for our seniors. We still need to educate our kids. Whether oil is $10 a barrel or $110 a barrel, some things don't change. These essential public services, and the economy wouldn't prosper if the public sector didn't get it right. So they need to be efficient, they need to be economical, but you do need the transportation system to work. And that's become more complicated as the city's gotten larger. We do need schools, and as the city's population has grown into these outlying suburban communities, we don't have those schools. So now we do need to find the resources to build those schools that our communities are asking for. Right. So some of those things have changed, given the nature and the size of our city has changed.
Right. I'll say one thing has not changed, as you mentioned, oil be $10 a barrel or $120 a barrel. The price at the pump hasn't changed much.
Good point. Yes, that's right. It seems to always go up and stay up, right?
That's right. So that's for sure. Yeah. Were the people who were looking for a change at that time now, after 44 years, or they just got lucky?
Well, my interpretation of the May 5th election results is that the government lost the election for a number of reasons. It's partly an entitlement attitude. The Wild Rose crossed over to the Conservative side, so there was a lot of distrust of both parties. Just what do they stand for? And the Premier kind of blamed the whole mess on Albertans by telling them to look in the mirror. So in the midst of all of that, along came Rachel Notley, who's a very warm and engaging person. She's as genuine in person as she is on camera. Right. And she came with hope and some optimism. So when people were looking for an alternative, they knew they needed change, they wanted change, they liked what she was talking about and the things that she was proposing. And I would say that by and large, the things that this government has done in a very activist 4 months still resonate and have public support. The Premier remains personally very popular with Albertans all across the province. So I think she was in the right place at the right time, but she's also the right leader for us in our province at this time.
Is Rachel Notley is related to Grand Notley?
That was her father. So I knew her father. I worked when I was first elected. 1980, he was the leader of the New Democrats, and for those 4 years until his untimely death, I met with him, spoke with him many times, and was always impressed with him. And I would say his qualities and her mother's qualities, because I knew her as well. I got to know her as well. She was a strong and capable woman as well. Rachel has 2 great parents, and she's got all their good characteristics in spades.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So we have a good leader in Alberta.
In my view, we're very fortunate to have a leader that's as good as we have. The one other Premier that was able to connect with voters the way that Rachel Notley connects is Ralph Klein. Right. There was just something about their ability for for voters of all ages and demographics. They seem to be able to identify with voters, and voters to identify with them. There was a warmth in their personality that I haven't seen since Ralph, and those are her characteristics.
Thanks, Bob, coming to our studio, taking time, talking about yourself, and now people of Alberta know better about you, and I'm sure they're going to make a right decision, and good luck to you on by-election.
I'm most grateful for this invitation to be with you today, and I've enjoyed this immensely. Thank you.
Okay.